What are some dark psychology tricks that actually work? If someone is bothering you at your desk too often, continue the conversation but get up and walk them back to their desk. Had a boss who was a guru at this. You'd be back at your desk wondering how the hell you got there. Story 2. If someone doesn't want to give you specific information like tuition costs or hours expected, give them an example that's completely unreasonable. They will usually immediately give you an exact number and feel embarrassed for pretending not to know. Example: so how much does your C++ course cost? It really depends on what your goals are. Don't you have a beginner's course? Can you give me a price range? Well, we can work with you to fit your individual needs. Okay, fine. So is it like $10 for access to all your courses, or... Oh, no, we have a subscription for $99 a month. You can also buy the beginner's course for $120. Not useful very often, but it works every time. I feel like if you have to get people who are selling your product to hide the prices, maybe something is wrong with your pricing scheme. I thought the whole point of pricing in general was to match what you're giving the customer with a reasonable price. Because the price should be part of your selling point or something? I don't know, I'm not in business. This seems stupid though. Story 3. Sunk cost. Basically, any time or effort or money that has already been expended or spent tends to be factored into decision-making even though it shouldn't. When I met my wife, she would always finish her drinks even if she didn't like them because she paid for them. I asked her, if you already paid for them, then the money is gone. Why suffer through a drink you don't like if there's literally no change in outcome as opposed to not drinking it except not enjoying it? This is why buying a car takes so long. You've spent so much time already that you almost feel like you have to buy it. You have invested time and need to get something for that investment. And oh my gosh, I do not want to go through this again. Story 4. I was a gymnast in college. When the younger hotshots were warming up for competition just before warm-ups end and it all gets real, one of us would say, "Wow, that's a great trick." One question: when you're doing that insane maneuver on the apparatus, when do you breathe? Screws them up every time. Well, congratulations everyone listening, you're now breathing manually. Story 5. Certified hypnotist here. You wanted dark, so here we go. Leading a topic by stating something you know the subject will agree with. Transition into a restatement of whatever it is they agreed with and alter it slightly. End with a rhetorical question leading towards agreement. Isn't that right? If you're slow and careful about this, you can get people to concede or agree to nearly anything without even noticing. Number 2, this one is incredibly frickin' simple. Consistently thanking somebody for very, very basic things. Things you might not even thank someone for. Think moving out of the way for you or handing you your water bottle from a few feet away. Once you make the interaction consistent enough, they will be used to the praise and it will be missed. Then, don't thank them for one or two things, and they will very frequently go out of their way in order to earn your thanks. That last one is some nasty manipulation. It's one of those things where I'm like, if someone did it to me, I would notice, absolutely, but I know I wouldn't. Story 6. The power of suggestion is incredibly potent. Most people underestimate how this tool can affect others. For example, I had a sociology class in high school, it was that or health, and we had to build and conduct a psychological/sociological experiment and write a report on our findings. We were in groups of 4. We had free rein to do what we wanted, but it could not be immoral or unethical. But being the group of antisocial rebellious teens, we decided to do an experiment on suggestion. It was relatively simple. We picked 3 subjects and chose a positive and negative suggestion, and the third was our control. Now, we picked 3 people. One popular, one not so popular, and someone in the middle, control. These subjects were picked so each one of the group members would have an interaction every class period for one whole day. For the popular girl, subject A, we decided to simply ask her if she was feeling alright because she looked pale. Unpopular male, subject B, was asked why they didn't speak up more in class and they should do it. We chose suggestions that would be counter to their personalities. Control C was simply asked how their day was going. By the end of the day, experiment subject A had gone home sick after 3 class periods. Subject B had an overall increase in participation that lasted several days after the conclusion of the experiment, and subject C showed baseline behavior. Now, we did get into trouble because what we did was unethical, but the teacher was so impressed with our report that he let it slide, and just made us apologize to the participants. Yeah, I was gonna say, does this not count as unethical? But it is very interesting. I think subject A is the most interesting to me. The idea that someone can feel sick enough just by suggestion that they would feel they need to go home. Story 7. Asking someone to do you a favor makes them like you more. It seems wrong on the surface, but shown to be true. So ask your boss for small personal favors every now and then. Also, if you want someone who has no opinion of you to think well of you, you can try this psychotic move. Act rude towards them, not overly, just a small transgression. Then seek them out the next day and apologize for your behavior, stating you had a bad day, and later regretted whatever you did. Now that they know you, wave hi when you see them. They will end up with a positive opinion of you. I can just imagine someone doing that last one way too often and people start talking to each other and you're like, oh, that's weird. My first interaction with them was the same. And then when they figure out they've been played, I feel like their opinion of you won't be so positive. Story 8. Whenever I want to help someone with something, but I know their pride gets in the way or they don't want to impose, I ask them for a favor first, even if I don't really need it. Examples would be like asking a peer how they arrived at a solution for XYZ, and then repaying the favor by going, you want to see something cool I learned recently? And showing them how to do something more efficiently/correctly. Or when you know your parent's heater is broken, but they insist on calling a repairman instead of troubling you, and suddenly you need to borrow sugar, but while you're over there, you might as well check out that heater. People like to feel helpful, and I like to give unsolicited advice. It works out. Story 9. Not so dark, but humans have predictable patterns when choosing stuff at random. If you ask 100 people to pick a random number between 1 and 10, a great deal of people choose 3 or 7. Even numbers, highest/lowest 1 and 10, and the middle number 5, just don't feel random enough. So when I play board games like Catan or card games where the others have to pick a random card out of my hand, I always put my most valuable card on either side, not in the middle, since the middle feels more random. Now this will actually be useful for me. As someone who plays Magic the Gathering, I am certain I can make use of this. I can't wait for it to backfire the very first time I try. Story 10. If someone is standing too close to you on public transit, all you have to do is throw a handful of dried lentils. They'll be focused on collecting the valuable food and will move away. Works every time. If you see someone attractive at a party or some other event where courtship is appropriate but they're not quite noticing you, here's a good trick to employ. When they're not looking, put a handful of dried lentils in their drink. When they notice and start looking around, make sure you're able to make eye contact, then wink at them so they know it's you. They'll be grateful for the valuable food and will immediately know that you're one piping hot piece of slam meat. This last one is a little risky, so proceed with caution. Earlier today, my boss was being quite disrespectful, but not in an overt way. It was more of a subtle but deliberate undermining, careful to only be noticeable to me. This is something they've been doing consistently for quite some time now, and it's had a negative effect on my reputation and working relationships. So here's what I did. This can be applied to similar situations, but again, please use good judgment. I threw a handful of dried lentils in their face as hard as I could. They were absolutely furious and started shouting at me, bringing out their true nature for everyone to see. I just filed a complaint with HR and I'm laughing all the way to the bank. Who knew that dried lentils were so versatile? Probably don't do this. If I had to guess, I think this is a joke. But I also don't know the suggestive powers of dried lentils, so maybe it's not. Story 11. Being over-the-top friendly usually counteracts aggressive behavior. Used to have this customer who was always super rude and verbally aggressive on the phone. I started being extremely friendly to her the second I picked up the phone. She just didn't have the chance to be rude to me. Doesn't work with everyone though. The smarter they are, the faster they're onto you. But it's usually the dumbest people who are the most aggressive to customer support anyway. Another tip? Always be friendly to customer support. I did support for a long time. Guess which customers got the fastest help? Or got helped with problems that were technically their own to solve, but I helped them anyway. Or at the very least sent them in the right direction or sent them a link to the correct page in the online manual. Guess which customers paid for every single second they were on the phone, plus the time it took me to register that time. And which ones I didn't even bill if it was just a 5-minute phone call. Friendliness pays off in a lot of ways, short and long term, even if you're faking it most of the time. I don't know if that last one is a dark psychological trick. It's more just treat others how you want to be treated, which I agree with, but I don't think it's the mind screwery that we're looking for in this thread. Story 12. If you don't feel like talking to someone, let them talk while listening and slowly just look away and avoid eye contact while doing a small task, and don't acknowledge anything they're saying after a bit. I do this by accident because of ADHD, but I noticed it one day as the person walked away mid-sentence, and now use it when I'm overwhelmed and want to be left alone. Please know I was still listening to them, I just kind of zoned out. Okay, hot take from the narrator here. You could also just be like, hey, don't really feel like talking right now, sorry. Maybe later. I think ignoring them mid-conversation is probably a little worse than that. Or at least even pretending you're ignoring them, I guess is what's being said here. Story 13. I learned this from my psychologist in order to defend myself from a toxic/manipulative relationship. I was in it at that moment, but I had no possibility of leaving, because of economical/social issues I had at the time. My boyfriend was really manipulative, and in order to pressure me into not breaking our relationship, he would continuously say things like, everyone says we're a great couple, or our friends see us and say you seem happy. On those occasions, I started asking him, who said that? Can you name them? Or exactly what did they say? Can you quote? When the answer was obviously no, I played the reverse card, assuming things incorrectly like he did. And I went, was it Jessica? She seems like the one who says things like that. Let me ask her. Or, I will text my friend group now asking who said you're a perfect couple to you. That usually freaked him out. And I guarantee you it is very funny to see a narcissist lose their mind. Story 14. Not necessarily dark, but the illusion of choice is a helpful trick we learned in sales. If you ask someone, when can we come for X? They're more likely to say they're not available than if you ask them, oh, what time works better for us to do X, morning or evening? Works well in other places too, because it gives the person on the other end a feeling of autonomy, while at the same time you're getting what you want. Story 15. I worked for a retail company that taught me how to say no to customers without ever using the word no. It's incredibly effective. Replacing no, we can't do that with something like, as it turns out, our policy is XYZ. People are more inclined to accept the hard truth that they cannot have what they're asking for, whether it be reasonable or not. This works in my personal life too, and has significantly reduced the amount of, well, why nots I get from people. Story 16. This one is one that is learned way too late. If a person is bullying you and you have tried to run away and that didn't work and you're still being bullied by them daily, you need to beat the absolute frickin' pants off them next time. Even if you win or lose, it doesn't matter. There's no referees out here. But I guarantee you that your bully 90% of the time will screw off, at least for a bit, until you can regroup and beat the crap out of them again. I think genuinely for legal reasons I have to say this is not advice. This is just what someone said. Story 17. There is someone I know that often gets physically very close to me when we're talking and sometimes touches me without permission. Super frustrating person to deal with, but somewhat benign as well. Not that benign though, because he is manipulative. There's something that he does that intrigues me. He doesn't move. He doesn't budge. It's very interesting. I also noticed that he challenges me when he finds that I'm sure. He will directly challenge my confidence. Seek out something that I do or say that he perceives as wrong, or even keep heckling me until I make a mistake and then he will attack that mistake. There is some dark psychology there for sure. I noticed it today because I realized I really didn't like the way I was being communicated with. I don't understand it, but if someone is being too forceful, like they won't concede an argument or they have to be right or everything has to be their way, it's uncomfortable and troubling. Story 18. One time I was volunteering at a shelter and this guy was creeping on me and wouldn't leave me alone. My female volunteer coworker and I kept telling him to go away and he was making us uncomfortable. I finally just smiled and said bye and waved. He finally walked away. So if someone is talking to you and you really don't want to talk to them, I guess instead of giving out commands, just cordially and confidently say bye or have a nice day. Say it in a way like you assume that they're leaving, and they'll likely be compelled to walk away. It's worked on bullies in the past too. I can't wait to try this next time someone tells me I have overdue debt. I'm sure this will go fantastically. Story 19. I play mind games with myself all the time to get stuff done. So for all my fellow depressed/ADHD/perfectionists out there, if something is overwhelming you, tell yourself you just have to do some tiny, insignificant portion of it. Or only spend like 5 to 10 minutes on it. It may be all you can muster, and that's perfectly okay. It's still progress, and you can pat yourself on the back. Remember, simple math rules mean that if you do a tiny percent each time, like 5 to 10%, within 10 to 20 times of mini progresses, you will have it completely done. Conversely, you may find that oftentimes it is overcoming the momentum that is actually the hardest part, and that once you get going, you may actually want to keep going. That's perfectly okay too. Win-win either way. While not diagnosed with any of the listed conditions, I have also done this many times throughout my school life. Just telling myself, oh, I'll just do like the introduction to this essay right now, and then I end up writing the whole thing in one go. It happened a lot. Story 20. Dominant body language. Relax, lean back, spread your arms and palms and knees apart. Look relaxed, but take up space. Do not look defensive. Look at people with your nose. That is, rise your face enough that you thrust your chin forward and look at them over your nose. Keep strong eye contact or look at their carotid artery. Slow, deliberate gesticulation. Voice. Talk slowly with pauses and emphasis. The trick is to try to talk with capital letters but not shout. Use the lowest tone you're comfortable with. People are far more receptive to baritone than chipmunk squeaks. Conversation. Repeat and paraphrase what people told you. So, what you meant was, it makes you look like you're listening and are taking them seriously without agreeing yet. Do not let people talk over you unless it's an emergency. Shush them with a gesture if needed. Remove attention in a conversation if someone is being rude to you. However, call out people on being rude to others. You can even weaponize it to make them look like jerks or detract from a conversation you would rather not have. Is this one weird to anyone else? Just the way they presented it is very strange to me. Like it almost feels like some weird pickup artist stuff. It's true though, these are decent tips for just acting confident overall, which is important in a lot of situations. But I just can't shake the feeling that it's like some weird guy telling me to do this at a bar to some girl I don't know. Story 21. Maybe it's just me, but I feel like I can lie to myself and believe the lie enough to forget the truth. Sometimes when I've lied about some small detail of a story, I think I actually forget what originally happened, and believe the story to be fully true with the details I've changed, and actually have memories of the lie occurring. Because of the nature of psychological trickery, I can't know for sure what is true and what is false unless I could actually time travel. But I feel like I kind of mastered lying to myself to the point of actually changing how I remember things. I know this is a defense mechanism some experience for trauma. I don't have any trauma that might warrant this, but I feel I've practiced it enough over time that it now has become kind of a normal thing for me to do on occasion for no apparent reason at all. I guess the good thing is, in theory, I could get to a point where I can actually believe I'm a much smarter and hardworking individual than I actually am. And then I actually fulfill that role given the false confidence I gave myself. Oh yeah, I've super done this. I mean, this is super common with children too, right? And it's not even lying to yourself necessarily, it's just misremembering things as a child and then you imagine having those memories that never occurred. Because childhood memories get all screwed up just by getting older. I think a lot of the time when someone has a childhood memory, some part of it is actually just wrong, but no one will ever know. Story 22. Telling someone what they're going to feel when insert event here. This is called the placebo effect in psychology, most often used in doctors' and dentists' offices, interrogation, and torture. Here's a little example. So, did you commit the murder? No, I'm not responsible for the murder of person. I'm going to attach a lie detector to you. If you don't know, lie detectors only detect heart rate. And if you're lying, we will submit you to torture. Or you could tell me right now if you unalived person and you won't be in trouble. From here, there are two possible scenarios. 1. Suspect immediately admits to the crime and gets prison sentence. 2. Suspect does not admit to crime, gets attached to lie detector. Interrogator says that suspect lied no matter result. Suspect confesses. The placebo effect here would be the interrogator using the lie detector, and or telling suspect they won't get in trouble if they confess before the lie detector. I don't think some of this is the placebo effect. Not to get too, well, actually on you here, but the whole telling the suspect they won't get in trouble if they confess is just lying. That's not a placebo effect at all. You have just lied to them. Story 23. So my partner's a psychologist that previously worked a lot with children and adolescents in acute settings. One of the most common things kids do in these settings is lie about symptoms in order to get a specific diagnosis. Pretending to have ADHD or bipolar disorder is the most common from my understanding, but my partner has seen people try to fake all sorts of weird things. To handle this, there are two basic tactics. You let them lie themselves into a corner by giving them topic confidence, or you hide your information gathering questions with unexpected topics. The first one is easy to do because kids are stupid and mostly just have a TikTok or surface level knowledge of any given topic. Therefore, if you do just a little validating and reassuring, kids will feel like they're on the right track with their answers and continue to lie until it's obvious they're full of it. Second takes a bit more finessing. Basically, people typically hyper-focus on what they think is important. So if you give them questions or topics they're expecting, they'll try really hard to give their version of the right answer. A consequence of this is that they'll drop their guard when asked seemingly unrelated questions later, since the important ones are out of the way. It's within these questions where you'll get a more honest answer. The dark part is that these tactics are not exclusive to a behavioral health setting. You can essentially use them anytime you want information from someone. Honestly, I have a good feeling that if I grew up in this day and age, I would absolutely be trying to force myself with diagnoses from doctors. I don't know what it is. I've just always had like a feeling of wanting to do something like that, or like, oh, I didn't know how to do this, that I would absolutely try if the resources were more there when I was younger. TikTok would have rotted my brain even faster. It's good to know that psychologists have some sort of methods for getting past that at least. Overdiagnoses of ADHD and subsequent medication is actually becoming a problem, or has been a problem for a bit. So I think these kinds of things are actually pretty important. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I hope you learned a few things. And if you did, make sure to use your powers for good and not evil. I hope you have a wonderful day or night wherever you are, and I will see you in the next one.